So I have this beautiful map right here, and I would love to roll it up. I think it's called furling or like unfurling a paper when something's rolled up. And I built this rig to do so. So let me turn on this here, and I'll show you the rig. So this is the little rig here. Very simple to set up. I have these little curler bones on the side that when I move them in, they curl up one side, or I can grab the other side and curl that side in. So you can roll the whole paper up, or you can meet it somewhere in the middle, like a treasure map, and just an overall root bone that allows you to move the whole thing. So let's reset it. So it's very simple to set this up, and I'm going to walk through right now. As you can see, the only things in this scene here, if I go back out, I have 2 lights and a table, just sort of something to set the scene a little bit. So again, this is just a plane over here, right? If I go into edit mode, you can see I've subdivided it quite a number of times. We're actually going to need more subdivisions, but for right now, that's fine. And let's sort of get into it. So the magic behind this, right, is literally just following a path. So let's get into it. I will Shift A, and I will add a path, and I will make sure I move it to my proper collection I'm working out of, which is new map. Right now I'm working out of the new map collection. And this is this is the curve we've made. It's actually quite big. I'm going to scale this way down. And I'm going to go into the front view here and just sort of look at this path we've made. So let me just sort of show you something that's important to know about paths. If I were to go out into object mode here, and I will call this path curl path, just so I know which one it is. If I grab my map here and I add a modifier in the modifiers tab over here, if I were to go ahead and add a curve and I were to set this to curl path, you can see it jumped the whole way to the left. And if you look in here, it set the origin to the furthest left point, and not that it's the most left point, but it's the first point on this path, because paths actually also have a direction too. So as you can see, it starts from the beginning of the path. And if I were to extrude one to the left-hand side, this is now the starting of the path. So that's just something to keep in mind as we're going forward here with these curves, is that it actually is important that we are keeping in mind what's the beginning of this path. Whereas if I extrude it at the end, nothing is going to happen no matter where I put this, because this is the end of the curve technically, and curves are directional. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to delete this end point here. I'll delete this point here, and it will snap it back this way. Actually, I'll delete both these left points here, both the points to the left of that. And you can see it's right here in the middle. And we're going to keep it there for now, and I'll go to front view. And the trick here, if I go into solid view here, we're actually going to make a little spiral here for it to curl through. So I like to just extrude on the X about a full square. So I like to use these grids here just to like sort of line it up. And we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll go 10. And then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just to sort of keep this square. And I'll just keep extruding towards it, but I'll never go to that next vertex there. So you just keep going to it. And as you can see here, I crossed this path, but it's okay, because once I extrude upwards, you can see sort of like the path fixes it anyway. So I just keep following this very close to the edge, and it's okay to do this. We really just want to keep spiraling this thing inwards. I extrude on the z-axis going down, extrude along the x-axis, and really what I'm doing is I'm just giving ample room inside this curve to hide the paper as it curls up, right? You have to think of this like the path that our paper will take. And I'm just going to keep going here, extruding, sticking to the z-axis or the x-axis, whichever one it happens to be at the time. And as detailed as you can go is very helpful. You can just zoom in and keep going. Okay, I think that's enough. So as you can see right now, we just have this giant spiraling curve. And here's what happens if I were to take my paper, which is applied to this curve. If I just move it along the x-axis, you can see it starts to go up this curl, and it goes around, and it's actually just going to go the whole way down into that spiral the whole way down in there, which is good. We want a lot of rotation here. Like we want this to be able to absorb the full length of the paper. So this is like the full size that the paper will curl to. So you want to make sure that this paper actually is a decent size. So by grabbing all these, if we again, if we set our cursor down here to this point in the corner, we can just grab all these, and with the 3D cursor mode selected up here, we can just scale everything in and make it all a little smaller. So that way, when I bring this paper around, you can see it kind of curls around there. That's still pretty big, actually. I'm gonna make that even smaller. You know, we want a nice little curl, something that it can just curl around like that. See how it just wraps up in there nicely? And the important part is, like, we have a lot of curl to get through here that we can just keep curling down. But if we didn't give ourselves all this room, we just keep going, eventually it's going to shoot out the side there like this, because it really just follows the tangent of that last point, right? If I zoom way in here, you can see here that this is sort of going in this direction. This is the last point. But if I were to actually go upwards on the last point, that's where the final direction is going to shoot it out of. So be mindful of that, making sure you have enough of these control points essentially here to pretty much mask your whole paper roll. One thing you can see is we have all this this sharp edges, and this is what I was talking about with we don't have enough subdivisions yet. An easy procedural way to handle this is just to add a subdivision surface to it and put it before the curve, and leave it on simple. Jump up the levels viewport here to like a number that starts looking decent, and then that's 3. So okay, that's what I'll be cool to have this much detail, and I can just leave that in the render. So I can set the render to 3 and bring the viewport back down to 1. So it'll look nice and smooth on the render, but in the viewport we don't need to be bogging down the display with all that subdivision. As I move my map through the curl, it wraps up. Perfect. So we have one side done. And if I look in here, yeah, it's looking nice. Okay. So I am going to have this point in the middle is not really helping me right now. So I will just Control X, which is pretty much like it just dissolves that point, leaving this face here, or leaving this edge between the two. I will grab the center point here, and I will bring my cursor to it. Again, with Shift S, cursor to selected. We need a curl on the left side too, so I can just duplicate this guy here. And then since we still have the cursor mode, the cursor transform pivot point up here, since we duplicated, I can just scale on the x-axis at a -1, and it will bring that whole thing over here. Now, I just really want to connect these two. But once I do, look what happens. So I'll grab this point over here, and I'll make a face here, I'll make an edge, and the minute I do that, we see that the whole thing goes to the left side and it looks all wonky. And you wonder why that happened. Well, remember what we talked about earlier? It looks for the first point in the edge, and now since the first point is all the way over here, it's a little bit confused. So if I were to move this thing left and right, it's going to control the whole paper, and that's not really what we want. So a workaround that I found is I just go in here and I grab the centermost control point, and I just extrude it out to the left a good bit, and I do like 2 or 3 just to make sure I have a safety buffer, and I pull it way out from the roll so it's not getting in the way. Now I can control this roll without actually moving the start point of the curve, if that makes sense. In doing so though, let's go back to object mode. We've moved this paper the whole way to the left, so I actually have to bring it back to the right. So just grab on the x-axis, and I will just move it, just back to the middle. This is pretty much the best way to handle this, is just sort of eyeball it, put it back in the middle. And now, if I were to grab my curve here that I made, we have the left roll that rolls up, and we have the right roll that rolls it this way. So we have this center curve here that it's kind of cool. It does this bending here, but it's actually unnecessary for the sake of this. So it will actually cause problems leaving it here. If I were to run over this thing here, it can start causing glitches and pulling in ways like this here. That's not beneficial to us. So I will just, again, Control X, dissolve that point. So now I have the full range of motion that I can roll over this whole page if I'd like on the left side, or I can roll back the whole way on this side. Perfect. And it's effectively done, right? You could you can go to edit mode and you can grab your whole right side and do Control H and hook to a new object, and then Control H over here, hook this side to a new object, and then in object mode, you have a sort of a controller that rolls up one side, and then you have a controller that rolls up the left. And that's the easy way to do it. Effectively, right, we're done right now. We've completed the task. So if this works for you, feel free to take this and run. And I hope you learned something. But I'm actually going to keep moving on if you want to stick with me, and we're going to build out a rig, and we're gonna use bones and an armature to make this kind of nice and usable. Say if it's like a map and your character wants to pick it up and move it around, just to have a fully rigged out system for this and have some cool looking bones like we had in the beginning. And also, hey, maybe hit that subscribe button and stick with me, and let's do some more tutorials going forward. Let me know what you want to see in the comments. All right. The hooks are cool, but I don't want to do the hook method because I want to go further and make an armature. So I'm just going to back up a little bit. Control Z, Control Z. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to delete my hooks here and delete these things. All right. So I'm back to this point here where we have sort of the left hook and the right one. Let's build our armature setup. And the armature is what's going to control all of this. And it's actually quite easy. So I will go Shift A, add an armature and a single bone. And I can just scale the whole thing down a little bit here, just way down. And now that I scaled this down, I'll go ahead and give it a Control A, apply the scale, just to be sure that we're here. And while we're at it, I'll hit F2, rename my armature, and we'll call this map rig. Or if you're real fancy, you can do map _ rig, because that's the fancy thing to do. And I will hit M, and I will move this to our new map. That's what I'm working out of, is the new map. So this main bone here, let's go into edit mode. Let's get some bones. So this main bone is what I want to do with this bone is I want to control the whole thing. So I will hit F2 and I will call this bone the root. We only need 3 more bones. So this bone controls everything. I'm going to Shift D, duplicate this over here to this side. And I'll bring this down a little bit. This bone I will rename to be the right side. And I will duplicate it again and then bring it over to the left side. And I will call this side left side. And then I will just duplicate the root one more time. And I'll scale it down. And we can just call this one the paper. We can call it the map. Really anything that signifies the thing being rolled up. I have these 3 bones. I'll select all 3 of these bones here, followed by the root bone. So that way the root bone is active since it was the last one I clicked on. I can do Control P and just keep offset. That way whenever I Control Tab into pose mode here, we have this full rig here that as I move everything around, it's all gonna go with it. Perfect. Let's just keep going here. We're almost done. So if I move this root bone here in control mode, it should be able to move everything. So we'll start there. I will grab our curl path here, and then I will Shift select the bones, and then I can go into pose mode over here. And what do I want to parent this to? Well, let's parent the actual path to the root. So if I just select the root, I can do Control P and parent that to the bone. So now if I move this thing around, it's a little wonky right now, but it works. The path is moving. What else needs to be attached to this bone? So because when I move the root bone, the map bone moves as well, it's going to be just fine if we just go ahead and click on our map, Shift click onto our armature, tab into pose mode here, and make sure we just select our map, and we can do Control P and parent to the bone. And again, because the map bone is already parented to the root bone, if we move the root, everything moves just fine. The next steps are just getting this thing working right. Since we go into pose mode here and we have our active bone selected, if I Control Tab, go back into object mode, as indicated up here, I can make sure my armature is selected, then I will select my curve, and I will tab into edit mode, select all of these vertices over here, and I will Control H, and I will hook those to the selected object bone. And what that did is it set up a brand new hook, which hooked it to the rig, but specifically the right side bone within it. And if I were to go into object mode here, and I go into my pose mode, you can see that this actually attaches over here and it moves it through. And what's really cool about this is it actually also gives you can actually scale this bone too. So it actually changes the size of like how big is this like roll. So I can scale it down real small and like make the roll really tiny, really tight, or I can have it big. That's a really cool feature of rigging this that you don't get with the hook method. If I were to use this, if I were to select in here this map bone, and then I go back up here, I can move this map bone around and it moves the map. And the cool part about this is it actually, again, moves it through all of these points, just like before. So this is just a sort of one extra control to reposition the map. Say you have this thing the whole way over here, and then say they're both rolled up, but you're like, oh wait, this isn't showing. I can maybe have my map bone selected and just I can readjust it a little bit just to keep the same positioning. It's just a little extra control that you get using the armature method. One last thing we're missing here is to do the same thing to the other side, right? So I'll go back into pose mode, just select our left side as indicated up here. Now that this is selected, this is the active bone. If I just tab back into object mode, shift click this guy, we can grab all of these. Now remember, don't select these because we need these points over here to be our root or sort of our starting point for the curve. And I can just Control H and again hook to selected object bone. And now we actually get all these extra menus over here because we already have one hook. So you can recenter hooks, reset the hooks, select hooks. I would caution from doing this because sometimes it's a little janky and it can end up removing your hooks. So just stick to these top three for now. So hook to selected bone object, perfect. And as you can see, it set up another hook. Great. So go back into object mode and I'll select this. And our left side works as we expected. And you can also scale it up and down. So scaling up and down the left side, it does move it a little bit, but that's just something you have to adjust for if you really want to have a tiny little roll over here. But the cool thing is they don't have to be the same size roll. You know what I mean? Like you have one side that's super rolled up, the other side that's not as rolled. But Alt S, Alt R, G. All right, all the alts back, perfect. I made these custom shapes here, which is just this little shape here. I made this thing. Really what these are, they're just objects, right? Like I would just go into mesh, grab a plane, and I will delete only the faces. So I have these like just the edge here, and I can move these things around. You know what I mean? And I just have like a shape. What these custom shapes do is they allow you to make custom shapes for bones. If you've ever dealt with a rig and the bone has like an interesting shape that's not a bone, down here, if you click on a bone in pose mode, if you go down to viewport display, you have this custom object. You can just sort of eyedrop a shape, and as you can see, that bone took on the shape that I just made. So it's really handy to like make cool custom objects. So I'm going to delete that plane. So this one on the right, I made this custom shape here, this circle, and as you can see, it has sort of a small shape. You can sort of use the scale to resize it. So I did 2.6. I found that was a good scale, and now that's the shape of the bone, which is super cool. Maybe it needs readjusted, so if it's not perfectly where you want it to be, I can just click the original shape and just sort of scale it up, move it on the x-axis. Sometimes the axes don't line up, but it's just about finding the right axis. Perfect. Do the same thing for over here. I'll grab this guy here. And now, again, you can see here that just for the sake of this, I'm going to hide this curve. I'll just hit H and hide the curve. So as you can see, the armature, this shape here is actually the bone now, which is really cool. So if I go into pose mode, you can get this color here that it like is the same color as a bone, and it's very satisfying. It's like I just feel very professional making these custom shapes for my rigs. I can just grab this bone and I can set this custom object over here. And the scale was 2.6 I set, but really it's whatever you want. And I'll bring it over here. And as I can see, this needs some adjustment. I'll go to object mode, select this side here, and just move things around. Move it on the x-axis, move it on the y-axis, just to get it sitting right. Perfect. Okay, that's right. Awesome. We have some more bones. I have this root bone, which is this shape. I'll just pin drop that shape, and I kind of want to make that scale much bigger. And then we have this map bone. I'm going to use the same one here. I'll pin drop this circle, and I can make that one bigger too. Perfect. So if I just hide my custom shapes here, A, Alt, G, yeah. So these are all our bones. We just have cool custom shapes for them now. So if I bring this side in, it rolls the whole thing up. Bring this one in, it rolls the whole thing up. Yeah, we're done. Really, we're done. We can just top it off with a couple more things by locking some axes that don't need to be moved. For example, if I rotate this bone, we get like really weird results that like shouldn't be happening. So we'll just start locking things that shouldn't move. So if I move this upward, it's actually the y-axis I have to lock. So that way, since that's locked, if I just move this around, this is perfect. I can move this around as needed. We're going to lock the Z as well, so it just moves on the x-axis if I grab it. This guy needs no rotation, so can't move at all. The only way I can move this is left and right. This one, same thing. I don't want any rotations, it looks like. Probably for either of this left or the right side. Again, just make sure you know which bones you're grabbing before you start slinging these around. I want to just keep everything open for my root bone because the idea for that is I can really just move that around however I want to. So yeah, you got to be a little bit careful. Actually, it's kind of cool that it has that freedom to like move that around and stuff, but I want to be a little bit careful. But no, I got to be intentional here. So we'll just lock it so it only can move on the X. Same for this one, only can move on the X. And I think, yeah, so say your map's just at some like obscure angle because your character's holding it. You can just grab this and hit G, not worry about any axes at all, and just be confident that it's going to roll it up on the proper angle. And you don't have to hit any sort of axes, it's just going to roll it up nicely as you please. And that's super nice, you know? So there you go, that's the full rig. And there you go, you have a little map unrolling animation. So the idea here is simple. Again, to recap, we have curves. We have an armature that controls those curves using hooks. I mean, the rest is history, folks. Look, you can unroll maps, yoga mats, money. Whatever you have to unroll here in Blender, you now know how to do. So thanks for watching. Feel free to check out my channel. Let me know if there's anything you want me to cover, tutorials. I want to just sort of deep dive in Blender as much as I know. So thanks for everyone that's been tuning in up to this point, and I'll catch you later.